Bison just came out, and I'm sure you're trying to learn how to play this character. Don't worry, I got you. In this video, I'm gonna go over the basics when it comes to dealing with Bison, what you should and shouldn't be doing, which buttons you should be pressing, and why you are pressing them. With that being said, let's get started.
I'm not gonna lie, you need to subscribe now.
So when it comes to Bison, you want to be using a mixture of his specials and his buttons in neutral. And when I mean special moves, I mean basically just one. This one. Okay, now the reason why we particularly like this button here is because in the case that they block it, it is very hard to punish. The medium version is -5, right? So that means in a lot of spaces, if spaced incorrectly, it can be punished, right? If you do it haphazardly. However, let's suppose we're right here, right? If we're playing right here, makes it a little bit harder to punish it because it pushes you so far out. So it ends up becoming a tool in which we can kind of use it to bait our opponent into pressing into us, right? So we throw this button out and then we try and whiff punish, depending, they're not always gonna press light kick. They'll most likely try and press their other buttons as well. Learn that they can no longer do so. And you can also use it, say if they're not gonna press anything, you can use it to bridge the gap between you and the opposing character, right? So with that being said, that's something that we want to use fairly often in neutral, just because it's so overtly obnoxious when it comes to dealing with it. Yeah, the next thing I wanted to go over is the Psycho Crusher. Okay, let's just get some straight off with EX Psycho Crusher. Safe. Okay, don't even worry about it. Sometimes if you feel like your opponent is going to try and throw a fireball and you're not sure whether you'll be able to punish it, just use the EX version, right? So with that being said, it does go through projectiles. There is one thing to note about this though, is that the specific version, it goes through one fireball or one projectile hit. Okay, so let's suppose our opponent uses EX, right? In the case that he uses EX, you have to use EX, because otherwise you will just outright lose, because it can only eat one hit. However, when it comes to EX Psycho Crusher, it's fully invincible, so you'll go through the entire thing instead. So just keep in note the fact that you can only use the normal Psycho Crushers to go through one projectile hit, okay? Not multiple. Let's go on to the stomp. Now the way you want to use this is that sometimes you'll sprinkle this in neutral. Now you need to be careful about using this, especially when it comes to dealing with modern players, because modern players, regardless of how you do it, they will react to this pretty consistently. So there is a punch version and there is a stomp version, right? When it comes to the punch version is good, especially when you're trying to make up the space, right? Let's suppose we even use the heavy version. It's very good for making up the space, as opposed to the stomp, because the stomp goes immediately down. Now where this stomp has particularly good presence is if, let's say, we're in neutral here and then we decide to off of like our crouching medium kick, we decide to go upwards, and from there we can use the stomp to apply extra pressure, right? So it's a good way to add a little extra oomph to your pressure and make sure that it's a little bit harder to deal with. So in these cases here, I want you to enforce this type of thing by using something like crouching medium kick into it, and then you can go into the follow-up, which is another punch. Okay, so by doing this, you're making it very hard for your opponent to kind of deal with you in regards to anti-airing. And then if you really feel like your opponent is starting to get a hang of what you want to do here, what you can always do is that you can use the stomp and then back away from your opponent to kind of bait DPs. Okay, with that being said, let's move on to the next aspect. Okay, that is bomb application. No one knows what this is actually called, bro. I don't know what it's called. I like to call it bomb. Most people are gonna end up calling it bomb, so I'm gonna call it bomb. Now, when you do this, it applies a bomb to their chest and it will implode. Okay, so how do we use this? Ideally, we want to apply this any which way we can because it starts up our mix-ups. Okay, so after we apply bomb here, what we can do is that we can fly at our opponent using our Psycho Crusher, and by doing so, if they decide to block it, it will immediately implode it. So let's say we do something like this. We run at them and it immediately implodes it. And because of that situation, you are now +6 on block. So pretty much anything you want to go for here is pretty much fair game. Now let's move on to his buttons. So there's some pretty interesting buttons. Obviously you got to use crouch jab, and crouch jab is fairly good to use as well, right? So some moves to note is obviously his crouch jab is 4 frames and it's a fairly good one. But the thing that we want to take advantage of is his crouching light kick. Now the reason why the crouching light kick is good is for my semi-advanced players, you can do drive rush crouch light kick. Okay, now the reason why we want to do drive rush crouch light kick is because we're +2 here and we're in throw range. The other thing about it is that it's fairly hard to interrupt because it's so plus and it sticks out a fair bit. So it makes it a little bit hard to deal with. So it's something that on top of using this in neutral, right, and using some other your buttons that I'll go over in a little bit, it's very good to use in regards to drive rushing. I'd honestly say that it's probably the go-to button for drive rushing. The next button I want to go over is standing heavy punch. Standing heavy punch is plus. It's also a fair bit slow, but it is plus, and this is something that you want to definitely use, especially when you have them in your face. You're +1, you go for a crouch jab and they have to respect it, and then you can also mix it up with the throw. So generally the situations that you want to go for it in is probably when you knock down your opponent and then you want to get some extra plus frames and then go for a little extra oomph. Now with that being said, there's a button out there that does the thing but better, and that is back heavy kick. Okay, back heavy kick is my bread and butter because you throw that thing on there, booms, you're +5 and you gotta guess, hold everything. You press the button, hold that everything. Now this button is +1 on block, and once again you can kind of play this game, right? Keep it true by going into crouch jab, or you can do it a second time, or you can go into a walk forward, or you can try and bait throw. It gives you a lot of versatility when it comes to your offense, and you definitely want to be abusing it. Let's move on to a couple more buttons. Standing medium kick is decently good for playing the neutral with, kind of baiting your opponent into pressing into you. And it's a semi-decent button, but if you have these buttons here, and then you also have crouching medium kick, which is honestly surprisingly good. Honestly, when I was first seeing it, it didn't seem that great to me, but not only do you get crouching medium kick into drive rush, but it's also a fairly good move, especially if your opponent is walking back. I touched over the most important buttons, so let's go over the neutral. So when it comes to neutral, right, in general, you want to be mixing up between using this option here, right? Obviously we want to space, if we're going to use the medium one, we want to space it out a little bit more. If we're going to use the light one, we can be a little bit more haphazard with it, but regardless, it makes it very hard for them to punish. You also want to mix in a couple of standing medium kicks just to check the space, and use your crouching medium kick to get in. If you want to get your party started, you can use crouching medium kick to do so, right? So that's going to be our way of getting in if we want to do so. For my little more experienced folk, you want to try and check drive rush. Your crouching medium punch will be your party starter. Okay, not only is this button amazing at checking drive rushes, but it also gives you a fat punish, right? And you want to make sure that you're punishing your opponent for dare trying to drive rush at you. And you want to always, you know what I mean, get the party started like this, and it's fairly good for that. With that being said, I did not go over the standing medium punch, and I believe the standing medium punch is very good for the up close game. So for the up close game, I generally like to go for plus frames if I can enforce it, and when I do so, I'll either go for crouch jab into throw, or crouch jab into walk back. Now the reason why we use crouch jab into walk back is to bait our opponent trying to throw the entire time, right? Another way we can bait our opponent is walk forward into neutral jump, and that will blow up our opponent as well, because some people like to delay tech their buttons, and in order to blow them up you're gonna need this option. Okay, so once again, you want to go for your plus frames. Once you lock them down with your plus frames, you either want to keep it honest, right? You keep it honest by trying to press crouch jab, or you can get a little bit disrespectful. So what happens is, like, let's suppose you go for something like this, right? Obviously you can crouch jab out of this, something like this, but because they see this, they're unlikely to want to try and press. But after they see you do it a second time, that's when they'll want to try and interrupt you. So at that point in time, that's when you keep it honest and then you check them for it, right? So let's suppose our opponent, you know, he's trying to mash the crouch light kick, right? We just want to make sure that we're not giving them the opportunity to get these type of punishes on us. Okay. With that being said, so we want to make sure that we're not allowing our opponent to get away with certain things, right? So we go ahead and punish it that way, and then like I mentioned, if we want to run in at him, we can also, that's an option for us to do as well, right? We want to make sure that we're pressing it at the correct time, that way we get our punish. We go into bomb. From bomb, we set up the same type of situation. If your opponent feels like you're always going to psycho crusher at them, feel free to change it up with elite, you know what I mean? Switch it up by trying to go at them this way, and then force them into situations in which they have to guess. Okay, with that being said, I hope this helps you get the basics down with Bison, and have a good one, y'all. Peace.